The Formula One stewarding system has come under scrutiny in recent weeks. Following the consequences from the Austrian Grand Prix, team bosses and drivers have been involved in talks aimed at reforming the way races are managed, with concerns previously appearing at other Grand Prix due to the part-time and interchangeable nature of stewarding. McLaren team CEO Zak Brown feels the existing setup hurts the sport of Formula One, and he didn't hold back in any of his comments about the FIA. Following the clash between Max Verstappen and Lando Norris, the Austrian Grand Prix became the latest to have its stewarding called into question. Norris was handed a 5-second penalty for track limits after numerous warnings, but many thought his last strike was excessive because he surrendered the position back to Verstappen after gaining an advantage off the circuit. Part-time stewards have not previously issued penalties for such incidents, but they did at the Red Bull Ring, and team bosses and drivers want to increase uniformity in that area of F1. At the British Grand Prix, Brown told that he has had very healthy conversations with the FIA about prospective changes to how races are stewarded in the future. I think the FIA recognise part-time, underfunded stewarding is not how you govern a full-time, very intense, very technical, very big racing series. So the conversation's been very healthy. I don't think we're set up for success with the current system, continued the American. I think it's important. It's not a reflection on the individuals that are stewarding, but to just show up and do this part-time as a favour isn't what we need, and I think there'll be changes to address it, to raise the professionalism and the investment in stewarding, which I think everybody universally welcomes. Brown continued on by saying that the drivers need to have the greatest input in what changes, if any, are to be made. I think the drivers know best, and I know they had a long meeting yesterday. I think the drivers need to have greater input to what they think the driving standard rules should be. At the end of the day, they're the ones driving. So if they can all get aligned and agree on what that is, then that seems like a great basis from which to start from. And then the stewards need to consistently govern against whatever they all agree to. But wrong decisions wasn't all Zak Brown was angry about, as he also talked about his belief that Formula One teams should have a smaller role in voting on the implementation of FIA regulations, claiming that team principal meetings can be pretty embarrassing, as everyone votes for rules that help their teams in the near term. It's safe to say the FIA are making a mess behind the scenes right now, don't you think? The McLaren CEO has confessed that he would want teams to have less authority, with Formula One and the FIA making the final decisions and enforcing the regulations to produce a fairer and better sport. Zak Brown expressed his worry that allowing F1 team principals too much power in formulating and executing regulations leads to contradictory decisions in embarrassing team principal meetings. It does make you wonder, how did we go racing without any of this stuff for as long as we did, and not have any of these controversies? I think the teams collectively are pretty guilty of creating a lot of these issues themselves by overcomplicating what we want in race cars, what we want on regulations, Brown continued. Because something will happen, and we'll all spend an inordinate amount of time getting into so much detail, and we don't necessarily think about the unintended consequences. So that comes back to my view, which I think I've been consistent on. I'd like to see the teams have less authority as much of a voice through voting for all these different things that we vote on. We're all conflicted in some way at some point, and the threshold for teams to be able to rally together to block something that is not in there. I think we do need to give more of the power back to Formula One and the FIA to do what's right for the sport. I think we're our own worst problem. Brown stated that these revisions would need to be included in the next draft of the Concord Agreement, although he may be in the minority in his views. Not everyone is on the same page because they want to have the ability to influence the outcome, Brown informed the crowd. It can be pretty embarrassing at times in the team principal meetings. Brown cited one such case. When Lando was up on penalty points 2 years ago, we made our case that actually the majority of his penalty points weren't dangerous, and Otmar Szafnauer of Alpine was totally against it, because obviously everyone wanted to get Lando banned. Fast forward 12 months, Gasly's up against it. Otmar brings forward the same exact case that we brought forward, and we were like, dude, you voted against that. He didn't even know where he voted. Brown noted that such an attitude is not healthy, as it leads to the application of regulations that are heavily influenced by how a team feels in the time, rather than teams choosing what is best for Formula One. He went on to say that Formula One needs to take this kind of "what's good for me today" vote out of the system, and let the FIA and Formula One regulate for the fairness of the sport. What's your thoughts on that? Should the FIA and Formula One take more control over the ruling side of things? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Zak Brown also took some time to talk about McLaren's chances to win the championship, and he believes the team is prepared to go toe-to-toe with Red Bull in their Formula One title bid, but that the team will not be nasty about it. Following a series of car changes, McLaren has reduced the performance gap with Red Bull in recent weeks, collecting the most points over the last 6 races. McLaren's rise to the front has fueled simmering tensions between Brown and his Red Bull colleague Christian Horner. Sergio Perez's performance issues in the second Red Bull have opened the door for McLaren to make an unthinkable title push and reduce Red Bull's advantage to a 78-point gap as the season is at its midway point. And with both teams anticipated to be evenly matched in the second part of the 2024 season, Brown says McLaren is ready to combat Red Bull without exceeding the line. "We're prepared to go toe-to-toe," Brown said. "Nasty is not how McLaren goes racing. I think you can go toe-to-toe, but you don't have to be nasty about it." They seem to, at times, have a win-at-all-costs mentality. "That's not how we go racing, but we think you can go toe-to-toe and take the fight to them our own way." When asked how McLaren had managed with the increased pressure and limelight of competing for victories rather than infrequent podiums, Brown insisted that the good stress of battling at the front had not affected the team's pit wall. "It's exciting. It's a good stress of going, don't get this wrong because this is for a race win, and when it's a 4th or a 5th or an 8th it's different. But I think it's enjoyable. I'm on pit wall, and the tone of the team led by Andrea Stella, team principal, by Randy Singh, racing director. You wouldn't know if we're racing for the win or we're in 10th. I think that's what you want to see. There's nothing on pit wall like, oh my god, we're in the lead. It's business as usual, so the team is definitely up for it." This generation of McLaren is fresh to racing for victories as a team, but Brown believes the Woking-based team has the winning heritage to iron out recent race execution blunders. There's a lot of race wins and championships inside McLaren, so while it's a little bit newer to me, Andrea Stella's been there, done that with one of the best drivers and best teams in the world, as a lot of people inside McLaren. We're hungry for it and we're very critical of ourselves. If we made a mistake, we talk about it offline. But we definitely do a very detailed post-race analysis. But there's a lot of confidence in the team. Fighting for race victories is a new reality for its drivers, with Norris learning the hard way in recent races that he must be blazing on all cylinders to beat Verstappen. "To win the Formula One World Championship, everyone needs to be at 100%, Brown replied. When asked if there were still elements of his racecraft Norris should refine. "Lando is learning every time out there, right? He's got the benefit of one win. Max and Lewis and Michael Schumacher, when you've won as much as they've won, that gives you a lot of experience. Lando's still getting that experience of winning Grand Prix, which I think is great, because the only way to get it is to get stuck in there, and he's just going to continue to improve as a driver. He's perfectly capable of winning the World Championship now, but that doesn't mean he still can't get better. I think Max is a better driver today than he was in year 1 or year 2 of his championships. So these drivers continuously refine their game. Can McLaren challenge Red Bull in the second half of the season? Will they be able to overcome that 78-point gap in the upcoming 12 races? What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.